Hey everyone, with the recent patch bringing a lot of balance changes, I decided to test out some of the new weapons and skills in open world PvP and found an amazing build. Just as a small note, I originally tried out dual swords, although the changes seem like an overall nerf rather than a buff, as they just feel super awkward to play now, and a 3-meter offset is actually pretty bad for their mobility. The build that we found a ton of success with though is a bear paw build using the new and improved Battle Rush. Now, I mostly tested this in open world PvP, and I think it really shines there. The two other best builds for solo open world PvP right now are the one-handed spear and the double-bladed staff, and I think this build is actually right up there with them in terms of its strength. The one thing that I've been really loving about this build in terms of solo open world PvP compared to the other ones is that you can always take 1vx fights. I feel like I'm never in a situation where I feel like I can't fight it. It's definitely just overall better than the double-bladed staff for taking like 1v2s and 1v3s, and the spear, it's just more consistent then, because in some fights for the spear, you kind of need them to not have certain things to be able to 1vx with the spear, but the bear paws, I feel like I always have options to win the fight, which is super nice. So you can see the build that I've been using on screen here, and for our weapon we're going to have the bear paws, and we're going to be using the third Q because it has another dash, which is mobility, and a little bit of CC, which is really helpful in the open world. And then for the W we're using Battle Rush, as we were just saying, that gives us 2 dashes, and then with the E we have 3 dashes on the bear paws, which is absolutely insane in the open world. And then I was just using the bleed passive, although you don't actually end up auto attacking too much, so I don't think passive matters all that much. For our armor, starting with the shoe slot, I was using assassin shoes, as pretty much just want refreshing sprint and a cooldown passive on your shoes. I like assassin shoes because in some fights having that invulnerability switching to dodge roll can be quite helpful. For your chest piece you have 2 options. Assassin jacket is the way to go if you're focused more on ganking, but if you want something that's a little bit better at fighting, maybe doing corrupted dungeons even, or just looking for more fights in the open world, mercenary jacket can provide some much needed sustain. For your chest piece, it's really up to your personal preference whether you go cooldown reduction or balanced mind, because cooldown reduction can be really helpful for mobility's purposes, but balanced mind is just very helpful to help you do more damage, and then also help, especially things like your mercenary jacket, heal you more. On the headpiece, I like to either go fiend cowl or guardian helmet. Guardian helmet if I'm doing stuff in the red zone, as it's really helpful for escaping there, and then fiend cowl for pretty much everything else, as you definitely need it for black zone ganking and things like corrupted dungeons. Fiend cowl is very helpful. For my cape slot, I was using Fatbird Cape most of the time, as it's just a sort of nice extra little damage every once in a while, helpful for dismounting people in the open world, and helpful for the sort of hit and run style that Bear Paws uses in corrupted dungeons. For food, I was using omelets just for more mobility. Omelets means you just get all 3 of your dashes up faster, and then for potions, obviously using poisons in the open world. One thing to note with this build is that it is very energy hungry, so if you're going to be doing lots of fights, if you're planning on going out and fighting people, or you're finding yourself running out of mana when chasing people down, you're probably going to want to swap something in your build for more energy regen. So you can use Scholar Cowl if you're planning on fighting. Limber Escape is always a good go-to option for just generic energy regen, and then you can use energy potions if you really want to. Okay, before we get into some clips, I just wanted to briefly talk about the playstyle for this build, as it's a triple dash build and you still have your boots, especially with refreshing sprint resets those dashes pretty quickly, and so the vast majority of your playstyle is focused on dashing around your enemies and positioning well. Usually you always want to try to use your E in on them, get that damage and that cooldown reset, and then if you do need to get out a little bit or space them a bit, you can use your W to get away or your boots to get away. Otherwise, just using your Qs on them and some autos is good for damage. Now, using Q3 on Axes, that 3-hit combo, can take a little bit of getting used to on Axes, because if you want to maximize your damage output, you don't actually want to spam all 3 of your Qs. You just want to use the first 2 and then wait for it to reset, and then just use the first 2 over and over again. Although in some situations you want the root and mobility from the last Q, so you can sacrifice the damage to use it, especially in things like ganking. Another thing to be careful about with this build is making sure that you don't get in combat accidentally when you're trying to escape, because all 3 of your dashes, both your Q, W, and E, all either debuff the enemy or do damage on their landing point, so if you use it too close to an enemy, you might accidentally end up getting in combat by hitting them. So if you're running away, just make sure you be smart about your dashes and use them away from enemies so you don't accidentally get in combat and be unable to zone or mount up or do other things. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over some clips of fights to show you sort of how you can fight with Bear Paws and win a lot of fights, and then I'll also go over some clips of some ganks to show you its potential in ganking as well. Okay, so this first clip is against a bow in a corrupted dungeon, and you can sort of see what I mean by the hit and run playstyle here. I go in, I hit all my stuff, get my Thefricate, my 2 Qs, and then I instantly disengage with that Battle Rush W. Now you can do this because against most builds you're just going to have more mobility than them with the Battle Rush, the E, and your boots. And so you can choose to only fight them when it's favorable for you, i.e. when you have your abilities like your E up. You can see here I try to disengage as soon as he pops his Guardian Boots because it's not really value for me to fight into that and his full A stacks, but I kind of mess up. I forget how fast Guardian Boots actually make you, and so I get caught by a lot of extra damage here. But I'm still eventually able to disengage and then turn it back around with my Resistance Potion plus Mercenary Jacket and win the fight. That is essentially how you win most matchups. You just out-resource value them by constantly running away when they use their resources. This second clip here is against a Curse build in a Corrupted Dungeon. These are some of the most difficult matchups because they just do a lot of damage to you when you go in, that even if you disengage, they get a bunch of stacks on you and the damage trait isn't even very good in your favor. So instead for this fight, as soon as I dodge his E there with the W, really nice thing about Battle Rush is it can get you out of snares and stuff, as you can use it anyways even if you're snared. So I dodge his E, so then I just try to man fight him. You can see the double Q spam here really helps for DPS rather than using the third one and having that 5-second cooldown. And then even though I missed the purge on his Mercenary Jacket, I was still able to lower the effect a little bit with that Battle Rush anti-healing again, which is super nice. So you can see here, even against builds that kiting isn't super effective against, you still have a lot of all-in potential. Moving into the open world now, this is a clip of a 3v1 that I did in the open world. Now everyone here is in flat 4 or 4.1, so we all look like quite noobs, but it still shows some good mechanics of how to take an outnumbered fight. So I did quite a lot of damage to this first guy before the other two dismounted, so it sort of defined my target for the fight. I was just going to try to kill him and then see what I could do about the other two after. Essentially, the key to taking outnumbered fights is to try to find isolated 1v1, so I'm going to try to pull these other two guys away from the one that's low using my mobility and then just jumping on the guy who's low. I hit the other guys when I can, but really my target is the low guy, so I just wait to use my E and everything I can on the low guy, and then all-inning him eventually once I think I can kill him. Now he got a nice shield buff at the end there when I was trying to all-in him, so I had to use more resources than I was hoping for, meaning that I couldn't finish the fight with the other two as I was just too low on mana and cooldowns. Lastly, for our fighting clips, I find this guy in the open world and try to gank him, but he turns around and tries to fight me as he has quite good fighting gear on him. This fight really highlights the value of cooldown reduction with a lot of dashes, as I pretty much only kill him with ease. I E him 4 times in this fight, and the rest of the fight is me just sort of running around him trying to minimize damage I take. So this can be a really valuable way of fighting in the open world, just essentially only hitting them with your E and running around the rest of the time. Moving on to ganking now, this first clip is of me killing a guy on a spectral boar. When I'm in the black zone in a gathering area, I tend to like to use stealth instead of running at them when I see a mounted opponent, because often they're on these tanky mounts that are really difficult to bring down, and I got lucky here and he didn't see me and dismounted on some resources. If he didn't catch it there, my bleed damage revealed him from the invisibility potion as his damage over time, which is a really nice thing about ganking with axes. I also got the purge on his boots, so now it's just a mobility battle, and Bear Paws with these triple dashes are just so good at catching up to gatherers who are trying to run away. Once you have a gatherer in this position, you really just have to make sure you inspect them and look at all of their abilities to see what outs they possibly have. I noticed the Undead Cape, so I just save my poison and my E to the very end so that I can blow through it. One of the things you have to watch out for ganking is that when you're catching gatherers dismounted like this here, you have to make sure not to use all of your mobility if possible to catch them dismounted, or else you'll really struggle to catch them afterwards, especially if you don't catch the purge. You can see this guy here got so much space on me because I used all 3 of my mobility skills to try to get in on him originally, which was definitely a mistake because I didn't need to use my boots there especially. And so after I used all of my mobility, he has more than enough time to just get mounted up. Luckily for me, he just didn't get mounted up, so I was able to re-catch him. The The rest of this clip is just a perfect example of what it's like ganking in the red zone. I just stayed a little bit longer to talk to this guy after he died because he was being a little bit cheeky, and I got literally the entire server of blues on me chasing me. And just watch this clip and look how many poisons that they throw on me during this chase. Okay, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy using this build in your solo PvP adventures. As always, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like and feel free to subscribe, as there's definitely more content similar to this coming in the future.